Hey everybody, Texas Stroker Airlines, former shop of Lone Star Mopars. This Sunday Fun Day, we're back with the Ram Revival, and this very well could turn into a standalone video for you. So if it does, I hope you enjoy. If it's just part of the longer saga, well, here we are. So the goal was, with the manifold off, we would be able to clear not only the core support, which we did not remove, mainly because I don't have the stuff to evacuate the AC, but also leave the hood on. And currently neither of those things is ringing true. Crux of the issue, someone really needs to make an extended reach engine hoist that's also extended lift for trucks, for four-wheel drive vehicles, for something that's not typical. And this is your standard everyday use, you know, engine hoist. You're going to have it in many brands. This one's from Harbor Freight. It works fine for cars. It would work fine if this was a two-wheel drive truck or lowered or anything, but it's not a crazy lift. It's from the factory. It's an off-road. You can see the issue here. We've got a couple of really dumb options that could potentially get us out of this, one of which includes taking the oil pan bolts off, which isn't difficult. It would be a little tedious where things are now, but it would be extremely messy. It is drained, but that means absolutely nothing when the pan comes off, trust me. Now, what I can tell you, you're probably thinking like, okay, we'll just put the stupid motor back down, take the front end off, and be done with it. Well, here's the issue. The crane is in its farthest position, okay, or what, half ton, whatever the lightest one is, which is the extended reach. Even using a load leveler, my angle of approach was about like that. That's not ideal. That's all I had to work with, especially with these spool type motor mounts. You can see that bracket right there where my finger is. If this was old school pancake style, you know, LA, RB, whatever, it would have lifted straight up, you know, or like with gravity, we would have had like a stud about that long. This was a nightmare, and I don't advise it. It's basically like you need an overhead crane, essentially, to do this properly, in part because of the cab forward design. And also, despite a good chunk of your motor being under the cowl, we also have the issue where there's just so much real estate up front. So, to avoid getting yourself in the position I am currently in, probably best to just go ahead, have your system evacuated before you park the truck, maybe buy the stuff. Or if it's leaked out, you know, then hey, it's no big deal. That's actually kind of the best case scenario, to be honest with you. You can fix it when you fix everything else. But the core support coming out would be fine. That said, I don't know that the oil pan would clear the grill guard. Maybe if we took the grill off again, this all just gets into a whole like trial and error thing that I can't find anyone else has documented. So essentially where I stand and why you're probably here is removing the hood. All right, so the problem with removing the hood on a second gen Ram is the hood is massive. As best I understand, it probably weighs 80-90 pounds, somewhere in that range, which isn't terrible. It's just the sheer breadth of the hood. It's not something you can do by yourself. If you had a hoist, you probably could, you know, a lot of overhead equipment, but it's one of those things, just two people can easily tackle this, and competent people, that is. Where you run an issue, if you were to drop this down, you could potentially A, roll the edge on your hood, which would be terrible, damage the fender. Depending on where you're at when you pull it off, you could potentially come back, slam into the windshield, crack your windshield. I'm sure there's many ways to crack the cowl or do something crazy like that, but the nuts and bolts of it, literally in this case, are nuts. Not sure how well you can see it there, but 13mm socket or wrench will get you in place, and there are two here on the passenger side. Obviously on the driver's side, we're going to have the exact same situation. This is the easy part. It's just once you have that second person, you'll be home free. Coming around, we've got to take some other things into consideration. The first of which, I can't find anything, owner's manual, nothing, that really outlines this entire setup very well. I assume this is like a safety sensor type of a deal. Maybe I can't really obviously reverse engineer things in my current situation. But right here, there is a clip, okay? You can kind of see it here. If we pry down, we should be able to pull that out. You could potentially leave it. We're going to figure that out. But essentially, since my insulation pad has declipped itself naturally over time from the front, the wire runs through here, and it's going to come down and terminates towards where our underhood light is. So, if we come over here, we want to make note of a couple of things before we get going. If you were to just jump in right now and pull our two 13 millimeter nuts on this side and on that side, the hood would be free and you could start pulling it. You're going to run into some issues though, and that's going to be wiring. We're going to have things that we need to detach. So if you note, coming up here from the front fender to the firewall area, there's some convoluted tubing. I think you can kind of see it. You can hear my finger running against it. It comes in and it attaches here with one of these terrible cable tie clips, all right? That is our first point that we're going to need to remove. Tracing the convoluted tubing up, we get to the second point. We're going to need to pry that free. Coming over, we now kind of turn off at about a 45-degree angle. Head up the hood or in towards the motor, we have our third cable tie clip. Moving on up, we're going to continue tracing the convoluted tubing. You can see it doesn't just stop at the light, we actually loop around the light, okay? This would be our fourth cable tie mount. And then for the light switch, the assembly, we have a kind of safety lock connector. You can see I've already pulled that back. This took a lot of effort to actually get that thing off. What I used was the world's smallest pry bar, or the Felo tack claw. Those things are super cheap. If I remember, I'll have one linked down below in case you're not from the tool side of the channel. With that removed, now this is attached to the hood, this light assembly, yes, but is not connected electrically anymore. So we can just leave it as is. If I stick my finger in here, you can kind of see this wiring bundle, right? It's kind of taped up. That actually runs up to the latch. So I'm thinking as we come down here, this bundle here that I've got between my thumb and index finger is this wire, and it's going to run all the way up. So we found where that goes, right? And so we can disconnect that, or this is actually another clip, which let's see, there we go. That's why I hate underhood insulation pads. Right there, this will kind of get this out of our life. We could then extract that once we've disconnected it. So what I'm gonna do, since I'm only one man and the tripod doesn't really go up this high, I'm gonna go ahead and start dismantling this. And the end goal, we don't have to worry about this. If there was a plug down here, absolutely, I would just disconnect there, leave all of this intact. That would in fact be way easier. What we're gonna have to do is just pry away at these, get them freed up, and then essentially just drape that over the fender off to the side. Then when we have some help, hopefully tomorrow, we'll be able to pull the hood off. So let me go ahead and see if I run into any issues here. But again, clip one, clip two, coming in right there, you got three. Going down the hood, right at the tip here, you've got four. And then when we kind of get to the hinge area, that's when we're clear. We don't have any more clips to concern ourselves with. So we've got those four. We've disconnected here together. And then I'm going to go up there and just pull that. Which, let me zoom in for you. Kind of get a good idea. There's just a little clip there. Shouldn't be too difficult. Pay no attention. This is just a magnetic pickup tool. But once I do that, I guess I'll just snake that down and out. There's a very good chance that I pull this underhood insulation pad and get rid of it. I'm surprised. You got to realize the truck's about 20 years old, and every clip along the front except for this one has failed. Can't tell if the other side in the same position's holding it, but hasn't been abused. That's just what happens with them. So we'll make a determination on that. Not sure the factory fully painted under there. Well, I guess we could do like a mural or stickers or something. So anyway, let's get back on track, get all these clipped and see if we run into any issues. All right, if you note, we've got some progress here, and that would be the wiring harness is gone. You can see the cable tie clips out of the way. If you note, still have that wire bundle in there, but where that unclipped, we should be good to go. That connection again right here, the yellow, that's going to go to our actual underhood light. And then this one here, which is kind of just going to have a typical white backdrop, is going to be what plugs in right there for that switch. So with all that said, this entire assembly here, we can take and drape that off to the side of the truck. That is out of our way. It is disconnected from the hood, and that means we are clear for takeoff in terms of just going to town with those 13 millimeter nuts. When I say that, keep in mind I'm just referencing the socket or the wrench size. But we will go to town there, have some help so we don't crush a fender, roll an edge on the hood, do something stupid. But there's one more thing we need to do, and what I highly, highly recommend before you just go ripping this thing off, that will be the easy part. Reconnecting all of this will be easy. The difficult thing will be putting it back on and aligning it. Sure, getting it back on, you just have the 4 bolts, reconnect that little harness there, nothing crazy. But getting it aligned could be some trouble. So where you can see right there what we want to do around that washer, you've got the stud coming through, you've got the nut, and then you've got a washer. The washer to the hinge, we want to trace that or scribe it. We want to do that again to the one down below. In addition to making documentation on those, we want to do the same thing everywhere we've got contact from this, hinge to the hood itself. What that's going to allow us to do is easily line this up. I say that hopefully, optimistically if you will, but instead of just wildly guessing or eyeballing it, we'll actually have something to go by, and that should get us in the ballpark. Essentially what it should do is just save us a ton of time. So I thought I'd clean this up decent last night. Apparently I didn't. Again, having that wiring gone will kind of give me access to this area. So what we're going to want to do is just spray this down with some quick detailer, a bucket of soap, water, and a spray bottle would probably suffice. But you want to get that clean so you can go to town. Now what I have here, I've got a Scribe, which that's going to be my last resort because that will take the paint off. The downside with a Sharpie is it could potentially rub off. You could also go to town with some masking tape. Paint pens are another option. But keep in mind, if you're going to town scribing that up, any place that you have bare metal, you're probably going to want to cover back with a paint pen, paint, spray bomb it, whatever. Just something to kind of mitigate any rust that would have an advanced start there with no surface protection. But before I get right here, this one that we're going to leave in place, it's kind of tucked up under this hood panel. It's going to trace up through here and then go to that hinge. The reason we're going to leave it, I don't know that I can get up there and show you because it would be dark, but various spots, like let's just say this recess here, various spots along the hood, there's little clips that hold that wiring in place. And subsequently, we're just going to let it stay in place with the hood. In the event that I decide to get rid of this pad, we will try to remember to showcase it. But that's what we need to do, is just detail it and mark around it. Alright, so I've detailed lightly, mind you, and brought in a light so you can see a little bit better. Sharpie, not probably going to be our best bet here. Now with the light it doesn't look like I detailed, but in the dark it looked pretty good. So what I did, we're here on the driver's side, I just went ahead and scribed it. That I believe is pretty easy to see where it looks like there's that scratch, right? That's what that is. That was me scribing line right there where it kind of is crooked. We slipped, not a big deal. But again, that is just going to be the best ticket. If you've got a good scribe, kind of like this one that's from Staville, it's a carbide tip, it is effortless. You almost don't even have to graze the surface and that thing goes to town. I'm going to bring you over here while we are thinking about it. And you can just barely, even with the light, see that I've outlined that in Sharpie, and my fear is that's gonna rub off real easy, possibly even just while detailing the hood and or removing it, I should say, let alone if we were to detail this out, kind of clean up that like hard to clean area at the cowl or something. This would inadvertently just be wiped off if we were to say forget that we had done that. So I'm gonna go ahead and hit this with the Scribe as well. That way it's just kind of extra secure for our realignment purposes. And once that's scribed, all I've got to do is have the tools ready for tomorrow, and hopefully I'll have some extra hands to help me get this thing off. But that's about it for what you need to do to remove the hood. Again, 13mm wrench or socket, whatever you prefer. Break those things free, take them off, and just have some hands ready to get the hood to safety. You probably want to lay out a blanket as well, just so you don't scuff or damage the paint on the hood. Similarly, it does you no harm at all to kind of line your fenders and the core support and possibly the cowl, with blankets. Moving blankets work really well. Fender covers if you have enough. Just anything, you err on the side of caution, doesn't hurt anything. But with that said, I'm going to scribe this, and I guess tomorrow we will hopefully get this thing off. Alright, so here we are on the passenger side where we use Sharpie. It is not as foolproof as the scribing line. It's something I would prefer to have done is use the Sharpie. My biggest fear, just the hood being jostled or slid around when we're trying to take it off. That could inadvertently rub off. It's very difficult to get a good line. Maybe a paint marker or something would be better. Don't have one here at the house, and at least not that I'm aware of. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to make use of this Stavilla Scribe. It's a carbide tip. It's almost effortless. So what we need to do is come in up top, and you can kind of watch as the magic happens here. So just, I'm applying no pressure at all, and we're getting a nice, easy to see line right there. You can kind of hear the carnage of it. But we want to outline the entire hinge, and then we also want to hit right around the washer so we can hopefully line the hinge and the washer back up, tighten the nut, and be back within spec for our alignment of the hood. Alright, so it is Monday, Memorial Day. I got the screen up, and it's overcast, probably about 60 degrees, which is crazy for this time of year. It's usually about 90 to 100, so waiting on some help. Gonna have some people over here. We have scribed everything. Not sure that you can see it too great. Again, paint marker probably gonna be better than the Sharpie. All I'm gonna do now is just, I've got, you know, radiator hoses and tools and hardware and all kinds of crud here on the cowl. Would not hurt to go ahead and move that stuff out, particularly while I wait for some extra hands. So that is what I'm gonna do, but I don't think I'm gonna be able to film this. I just don't want to run the risk of anything happening. The tripod, if I were to set it up, it might show some of this, but then it would just basically have a meaningless shot. I'm not going to be able to like stop and reset the camera type of a thing, so my apologies there. But essentially, again, you've got which with the light back there you can't tell, but we've got our two nuts there. We got two on the driver's side. There should be three of us, so I'll probably be the one that has to operate the ratchet and socket, but I'll have somebody here, and then maybe somebody on the other side, and then I might come in and try to like swing my way towards the front. Probably going to need to try and lower the engine down quite a bit too. And then I've got to find somewhere to place the hood, so I'll be working on the small stuff. Again, my apologies, I can't film it, but just picture someone on both sides of the hood, and that's essentially what you would do. But once that's done, my hope is the old Harbor Freight can crank it another inch or two to clear the cowl and the grill guard, and then we'll tackle the other issues of dropping a motor back in this when we get to that point, because it's going to be far, far worse than this by a significant margin. So that said, just wanted to kind of give you an update here while I wait. Again, main thing, I'm just going to clean everything up. Don't want to drop it on WD-40 or, you know, nice ratchets or anything. So I'll get the cowl cleaned up, and hopefully the next time you hear from me, we'll have the hood off to the side and the motor ready to pluck. Alright, well, the rain falls outside this Memorial Day, which is great. Don't get me wrong, it's not like I can get driving anyway. But ran into some issues. Yeah, the folks that came to help me actually had food they had to take back, and this is going to take a long time. I was essentially started on this side, and I was put some rags down to hopefully protect the paint, but long story short, we weren't going to have enough time to do it. The insulation pad, which I've never had this problem, as much as I've raised and lowered this thing, the insulation pad kept like getting hung up inside the square tubing of the hoist. That little divot you see right there, I simply took the you know, jack rod for the hoist and tried to push up to free it, and it just went right through the crud. So that's probably sealing its fate. What I'm going to try to do, just as preparation, and just because it was going to be super awkward, I can't really lower this a whole lot more. I've dropped it down a ton from when you last saw it, but it's still just at such a weird height, and it makes dealing with the hood ridiculous, because essentially I was going to have to be the man on the ratchet, and so I would have to have somebody supporting this side, which I wasn't sure how long they could hold it, and then we were going to have to basically like fulcrum, you know, without like letting the hood rest on the top of the hoist in case it would dent it. It's just a nightmare. It's really a nightmare. Again, had I have known any of this ahead of time, the hood would have been off, the core support would have been gone. I guess I would have just let the AC bleed or something. The stuff I can get for that's expensive, and I don't know that it would hold it for however long I need it. But I think what I'm gonna have to do, I've got my little accessories here. I thought this was gonna be 8mm, and I always like to check, because of course the manuals don't say jack about the sizes. Why would we include pertinent details, right? But essentially I'm gonna just go ahead and try to get the grill off, and I'm not quite sure what all is involved, but obviously we've got the bracket here, and it's 2 bolts you can see, washers built in, 5/16 socket seems to fit the best. That's what I'm gonna roll with. Coming across towards the middle, where you see that round tube, right, that's gonna be another one. Think there's just 1 bolt on it. Then on the far other side, sort of same thing here is mimicked. We've got the 2. And then I don't know that we have to remove these, but I'm thinking we will. It looks like these studs that come down, which I'm hoping those are affixed to the sheet metal. If for some reason that's like not part of the grill or the hood, it's gonna be a total pain in the butt to get that back together. But essentially everywhere you see something kind of golden, that's a nut. Again, 5/16 we're gonna need to take off. I can't tell if that's integrated with the flat or if it's a nut and a flat, so we'll probably take that one off and try to figure it out. But it looks like there's number 2, there's 3 right before the loop. By loop I mean the grill framework. 4 is kind of over there by the sensor. 5, I'm guessing there's 5, maybe 6. I'll kind of figure it out better. This day is not gone like I want it to, so I'm just going to take this off and see if maybe we can gain a little extra clearance. So I'm going to get started on that, and I will let you know how it goes. Also, before I set the camera down, right there, that's going to be sort of like a door lock rod clip by the look of it. You know, the pieces of plastic that always fall off, and then you can't lock or unlock your car door. I think that's the same type of an item right there. So we'll probably just be able to unclip that, because again, we need to detach what we have on the grill with what we have on the hood. So again, I'll kind of keep you posted in the post process. We'll see how things shape. Alright, so the rain's picked up, but we've at least finally made some notable progress here. We got the grill off. Will that help or hurt? Who really knows at this point in time, but hey, it is what it is. So as we come in, it's essentially like we thought. We had the studs here, and they come through. Luckily, they are part of the grill. Otherwise, that would have been a nightmare to reassemble. But basically, where you see the gold again, this was in fact a 1-piece deal. Actually, it'll be easier to get this one. But there's one going to be outside the grill frame. Again, that sort of tubing is what I'm going to refer to as the frame. And so you can see right there, just a 1-piece design makes our life easy. I just like to thread that. That's actually broken, interestingly enough. Did not know that. So anyhow, that is where we're at. That could explain some rattling up front, right? So the tubing is there. We've got stud 1, stud 2, stud 3, and then right here in the center section, that latch was actually very easy to release. It's just like I thought it was, a door lock rod clip. If you have any experience at all with those, you'll be able to handle that. Did it one-handed, left-handed actually. Then we've got stud 4, stud 5, and stud 6. Again, stud 6 and stud 1 will be right outside the tubing. Tubing comes down here. Again, if you were going to replace the honeycomb insets, you kind of have to deal with those. Just removing the grill off of the hood, not anything we are concerned with. These 2 holes right there, they're going to correspond with those 2 screws. The one here in the middle that's kind of right in line with the hood latch, you can see its screw there. Similarly, right there, I have those 2 screws. I'll get those bagged and tagged before I forget what they are. All I used, it was a quarter drive Heiko, 5/16 socket. Had to grab an extension to actually do this one here in the middle, and then I used my Stavilla spinner. The tandem worked really well. Broke them free with the Heiko, spun them off with the Stavilla, just like I like to do. And again, with the grill off, we gain a little bit more clearance. You'll still, if you're gonna pull an engine, obviously that's the work light, which, you know, but you'll want to be mindful of your hood latch, everything like that, the safety release. It's still there, it's still hanging. Could take it off, could leave it, whatever you prefer. I may jack this thing up and see if that's going to give me any clearance. I've thought it's really not the safest thing to do, and I'm afraid it's going to fall down into this cavity between the core support and the grill guard is the main reason I haven't done it. I could potentially jack this up, and since this is very secure with the grade 8 hardware, I could probably pick it up by the pen, the oil pen in this case, and kind of slide it over, but then I mean we're just going to crush into the grill guard. Maybe I'll jack it up, see if I gained any clearance. If I did, the next time you see me, I'll be ecstatic and this thing will be out of the engine bay finally. But taking the grill off, not too difficult. Maybe we'll do some upgrades there since we had to take her off. We'll see how it goes. But once again, that's my at least progress point for this evening, afternoon, rainy day, whatever you want to call it, train wreck. And we will eventually, you know, the light's at the end of the tunnel. It's just a really, really long tunnel at this point in time. So the light's really bright, but you know, it kind of takes away from how long the tunnel is, I suppose. Anyway, enough of the analogies. I'm going to get back to work. Maybe I'll just kill some time with a duster. I don't know. But stay tuned. Exciting times should be ahead. A little update. We're at an exciting point. This is either going to work or we're going to be inches shy. And what I mean by that, drill is out of the way. This is coming up like we thought it would. It's probably going to swing a bit whenever I get it up because I can't jack and hold it at the same time and dodge my skull from taking an impact from cast iron. But if you note right here, I'm going to zoom in. Look at that glorious gap, okay? The issue that we potentially could have is right here, okay? I don't know how much higher, I should say, this is going to go. With it being a truck in the rear sump pan, I do have one trick left in the playbook, which if you pay attention carefully to the load level, you'll note that I've gone way back that direction. If this gets close, I'm gonna jack the load leveler to do a little bit of that and kind of prop the rear sump up, dip the front of the block down. I don't know that it's gonna clear, it's just will the hoist go that high? I'm thinking it's gotta be close to max lift, but I'm gonna find out. So keep your fingers crossed. Maybe we'll have a rainy day, Memorial Day miracle, so stay tuned. Well, you knew it wouldn't be easy, and this is as high as the hoist goes. If you're ever curious what you can max your engine hoist at, it's right there. And as you can see, we're like fractions away from clearing. I've got like, 12 more threads on the load leveler. I'm gonna see if it'll dip down, and I don't know. Keep your fingers crossed. We're gonna try it. So it's still like a good 2-3 inches from clearing, but guess what happened? That's right, as I'm cranking the load leveler, I'm having to spin the block with this hand and then crank the load leveler with the other, and I guess we just got the magical amount of tilt to start dumping even more coolant. Of course the pan wasn't there, so it met me, the bumper, the grill guard, everywhere I just literally spent the last couple of nights cleaning up, so that's cool. But I guess I'll just let her drip, and I don't know, as dumb as it seems, since we can't literally go any higher, I'm kind of thinking about taking the pan off just to have this done. I don't know. It's going to make a mess regardless what we do. I'm just kind of ready for this part to be behind me, so I'll figure something out. We'll be back, hopefully with less of a mess. Well, let's make this dramatic for you. I really need a drink, really need to get inside. Still raining, but a miracle has happened. The 5.2 has finally left its home, and I have no idea how we're ever going to get anything back in there, short of buying like a gantry crane. But essentially what I did with the grill off, we gained the height. It was super close. I don't recommend what I did. It's kind of dangerous, particularly with no one with you, but 13mm bolts we had for the core support here, here, and here. Same thing on the passenger side. In the middle of that sort of triangle-shaped brace, that's our trans cooler. That's all that one is. I had to take that bolt out in order to let the core support literally fall in this case. Also forgot to disconnect, mainly because there's an engine dangling above it, the trunk release cable, or hood release I should say. That said, not a big deal. It's not an issue at all. We can fix that really easy. somehow you're probably thinking, okay, hey, that grill guard sat up about the same height or taller than the core support, didn't it? You would be 100% correct, my friend. And what I had to do, and the reason I didn't film this stuff, is I had to precariously balance the engine, spin the engine, pull the hoist, and turn the hoist, and essentially kind of came out this way, spun the engine, and then kicked the hoist out that way. And that's where we are right now. So before I set this thing down, I've obviously again got to clean all of this up. I guess I'm going to take advantage of these and drain this stupid thing. But again, the whole reason for this is these freeze plugs, and it's a shame they weren't brass. I guess I've actually talked to a couple of machinists, and I guess it's a common issue with small block LAs and Magnums. It's not like it was neglect on my part. They say just over time it always seems to go down this way, so I guess that's why it's important, A, you should maintain your cooling system, but B, just be prepared for it. I guess these blocks, you know, don't have the best cooling system cavities in the world, so just be mindful of that. But you can see the back one here on the passenger side, trashed. It is roached. This one is just kind of starting, and that one's actually, I would have to say, textbook example of what you'd want something to look like after 20 years of use. Front one's obviously no issues there. You can't really tell because it's greased over. In the back, they're at different heights. This one behind the CPS, mint. I mean, that thing looks brand new. This one, that's the, if you recall back to when I introduced the project, it's leaking from about the third down. So same thing on the driver's side, but good Lord, am I happy to have this done and behind me. I just don't have to crush myself, and we'll be home free. On this side, as I run into a torque flight, I think that's just kind of gunked. It could be failing though. The middle one, in this case, pristine. I mean, perfect. And then the back one, totally roached. So that's the way it went down. That's how this 5.2 played out from, I guess, like June 29th of 2000 when they must have built it, up until now. So about 20 years runs it, literally ran its course through those freeze plugs. So that said, I've got a ton to clean up here again. But all the while with this thing out, I'm so freaking ecstatic. That POS over there, the 440 is not a POS, nor is that stand, but the stand just like that I bought was the POS. It went back to Summit. They've already refunded me. I've got a really, really sweet RB specific stand coming. We're going to set the 440 on that. This thing here, I'm not a huge fan of, but it's functional for 60 bucks, is going to house this guy, the 5.2 Magnum. But I'm going to take some celebratory pictures as soon as I lower this thing down. Wanted to capture the moment for you as best I could, but I'm going to get this down, get a drink, relax and celebrate a little, and be back at it. You know, while I'm thinking about it, this is totally the end of this video, man. We're done with this part. Again, to get one in here, I don't know, maybe I'll pull the grill guard and the bumper and see what happens, but I'm thinking I might have to have a gantry crane and have the hood off, but that's another story for another day. This has been the Ram Revival. I do hope you've enjoyed it. Rainy day, Memorial Day. What better way to spend your time, right? But in all seriousness, big thanks to our veterans, those currently serving, and ultimately, in the true spirit of Memorial Day, everyone who never came back. That's what this is all about. That's why it's Memorial Day. That's why it's also important, in my opinion, you thank veterans because they were in that position, and the current active duty because they could easily become you know, part of Memorial Day. So freedom isn't free, never has been free. Big thanks to the men and women of the U.S. military that allow us to do stuff like this while they're out there putting their lives on the line. So on a lighter note, if you enjoyed the video, leave a like. Good times are ahead, I hope. They should be. But LoneStarMopars.com is the website. Make sure you're following along on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. All three at Lone Star Mopars. Again, my apologies, kind of losing my voice. But we did it. Persistence pays off. Dumb luck. You know, learned a lot along the way. If I ever do this again, man, it's going to be a lot easier because we'll just know what to do right off the bat. But she's out. Will she go back in? That becomes the question, does it not? And on that note, I'm going to leave you in a state of suspense. Thanks so much for watching. I'll catch y'all back here in the next one. Bonus content. Does 9/16 require a 2-foot breaker bar? Super awkward with the engine suspended. This might be nasty. Yep. There you go. That's stuff that we won't have coming out. I actually better run because I don't know how much is going to be in here. I would think the pan would be okay, but it may not. I'm going to grab a gallon. Always drain the block when I get the chance. Should have realistically done this while it was in the truck. It'll save me a lot of headache. But you can see right there kind of some of the same buildup. So I think it'll probably fit in the pen, but just to be safe, I'm going to grab a gallon. And yeah, that's it, man. Memorial Day miracle. Hope you've enjoyed the Ram Revival. I'll catch y'all back here for more from the show.